Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 300, can you believe it, of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. We recorded our first episode of the Extra Mile and released it on July 1st, 2015. So it's been nearly 5 years that we've been doing these events. And I know there should be something more special about your 300th episode, but frankly, as we are looking in the midst of the pandemic and COVID-19, it just doesn't seem quite appropriate. So we've got a lot of information to share with you today. We've got some information about results in a few big states, including Florida. We have new information about how the bar exam across the country is evolving and changing for July of 2020 and fall of 2020. Have some new information for you there. I'm going to be joined by Megan Saya, our senior editor and mentor, to talk about those recent changes that we got in right up to the last minute. I want to add one particular piece of information we got since we finished that recording with Megan, and that is that Kansas has announced this morning that they will also offer a choice of bar exam dates, both in July and September, and want to just invite all of you to check out our website at celebrationbarreview.com. You will see a menu item up there called July 2020 Bar Exam Changes. Just click on that. You'll see all 50 jurisdictions for the bar exam, what their current status is, and links to the state orders where we've got them. So make sure you're following that, and you probably want to bookmark that page. There's a lot going on. So in any event, we've got all of that information. And then I thought it was appropriate. We have not done any interviews for a few episodes now. And as I thought back over these 300 episodes, about a third of them have actually been interviews with successful bar exam takers. They are by far the most popular episodes that we do. And as results came out last week in Florida, we had the chance to do an interview right away with a successful student. This was a New York attorney who came to us, and on his first try with us, though not his first try on the exam, he passed the Florida bar, and he used PhotoReading. He came to our boot camp. He's just a great guy. And so we've got an interview with Frank Madia coming up at the end of this podcast. So I hope you'll stick around for that. Frank is a really wonderful guy, very engaging, and his story is really wonderful. So stick around for that as well. Now, if this is your first time on the podcast with us, well, welcome. There's a lot going on. You can watch or listen to the podcasts. If you'd like to watch, go to celebrationbarreview.com/300. That's the episode number. If you prefer to listen, you can subscribe to our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, on iHeartRadio, radio.com, lots of places where podcasts are syndicated. So make sure you do that and subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. We will be bringing you up to date on all the information around the bar exam as we get it. We've changed our publication schedule just a little bit to start to try to release these episodes over the weekend so that we can catch up on everything that just happened through Friday night across the various bar jurisdictions around the country. And of course, we want to make sure that we congratulate everyone who passed their February 2020 exams. We got results in several states in this last week. For those of you that did not pass, we want to invite you to check out our course and the resources that we offer. We're confident that we can help you to pass the next bar exam. Now, regardless of your status around prior exams, if you've been thinking about taking the July 2020 exam and you're just confused and want to know what's going on and what can you do, I want to make you aware of a special free training that we've got. It's called Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam, Why You Should Ignore the Crowd and the Fear. Now, this webinar is done several times a week, and you can find it by going to the link in the show notes and just clicking on and registering. Typically, we're doing these webinars on Saturday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays because there's that much new information. And the great thing about this webinar is that we conclude each presentation with about a 15-minute live Q&A where I'll answer your questions about your jurisdiction or what's going on or what your particular situation might be. But the real point of this webinar is to help you see the opportunity that may be available in the uncertainty around what's going to happen with bar exams in July and into the fall. It's a webinar that has been really well received, and I encourage you to check it out. It only takes an hour, but it's an hour that could change your life. So make sure you go to celebrationbarreview.com/now. You can find out more information and register there, or just click on the registration button on the show notes to get registered for the next viewing of that particular training. So hope you'll join us for that. Well, as I said, we've got a lot going on. I don't want to keep you waiting. Let's jump into the conversation that Megan and I had just yesterday, seems like forever, talking about what's going on with results, first in Florida, and then what's happening with the bar exam. The next thing that I want to talk about, results over the last week. We had the big set of results came in from Florida. I want to talk about those numbers. I know that for those of you that are not Florida students, you're going to be like, yeah, what do I care? But I think it's an important bellwether for what's coming in the rest of the country. It's the first really large state to release results, and I wanted to share those numbers. Before I do that, I want to say congratulations to those of you who passed the Florida exam, and so congratulations. We had a lot of people who were successful on the bar in Florida. We also had a fair number of people, more than usual, who failed by 2 points, 3 points, very close, which would indicate a certain amount of quota, and I think, regrading, a lot of half points, 23.5 on an exam. So that's unfortunate. And if you are one of those people, we certainly are disappointed with you. So let me just share with you what the numbers look like in Florida. Florida is unusual in that they only tell us the number of people who are first-time takers in terms of official pass rate. There were only 560 first-time takers in Florida in February. That's a much smaller number than normal. It may represent the leading edge of COVID-19 that was happening at that point. It's hard to know why people bailed. It could be that they were just getting frustrated on the exam. I'm not sure. In any event, 560 people took the exam first time, and 336 of those first-timers passed. That's a 60% pass rate for first-time takers. That is not a very good pass rate for first-time takers. Historically, in Florida, if we go back over 10 years, that number has been up in the 70s and high 70 percentile. So 60% is very low. Now, the big problem is the number of repeat bar takers. There were 1,150 repeat bar takers, so basically more than double the number of first-time takers. And when we extrapolate the number of people that have been approved for admission to the bar, which is part of what the examiners told us, and looking at past history, what we've got is roughly a 10 to 15% pass rate for repeat bar takers. So I want to say that again, that's 10 to 15% for repeat bar takers in Florida. So that is a very troubling sign, and I think definitely concerning all around. Now, as far as I can tell, and we haven't heard from all of our Florida students yet, but as far as I can tell, we've done better than both of those numbers, both for first-time takers and repeat bar takers. But a 10 to 15% pass rate is just insane. That's California numbers. And so if you were part of that group, that's certainly troubling. The overall pass rate, if you're looking for a overall Florida pass rate, looks to be about 25%. So that is a very, very low number. That is certainly a reason to be concerned. Now, during the week, we also got results, and today we got results in Alabama and I think in Maine. There's some other UBE jurisdictions that have released results this week. So congratulations to the people that passed in those jurisdictions, and for those that didn't, again, we want to work with you and help you get set up and ready to go for the next exam. And when we talk about the next exam, that really brings us to probably a big part of what we want to talk about today, which will be the changes or proposed changes for the July 2020 exams. Before I do that, before I bring Megan on, let me just say that in terms of where we are in the results season, we would not expect New York results. I don't expect them this week, although it's possible a week from today we might have New York results. I think more likely it'll be the last week in April in New York. We have Texas results coming end of April, beginning of May. Georgia and California both in May. So those are the next big states. And of course, there are UBE jurisdictions that release throughout this time period. So just stay alert, be on it. Let us know when you get your results, please. Okay, having said all that, Megan, why don't I bring you in? If you're here. Hey, how you doing?
Hi, how are you? Doing well.
Good.
How are you?
Good. How's homeschooling going?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah. You're learning all about second grade math again.
Yes,
Huh?
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
Okay.
No,
All right.
it's good.
All right. Good. Well, we're glad to have you with us. I think, did I miss anything in terms of talking about Florida results or these other states?
I think the only thing I was thinking was that it's good news that Florida released on time. We knew
Yes,
that
that is
Florida
good news.
releasing was
Yes.
going to kind of be a bellwether for whether we would be able to expect results from other jurisdictions on time as well. So that's at least good.
That is good. And I think some of the information we're getting from jurisdictions like New York suggests that they expect to be releasing their results in a timely fashion. So we'll explain that a little bit more as we go along. Well, let's talk about what's new with respect to COVID-19 and bar exam dates. What were the highlights that jumped out at you? It's been a busy week. There's been a lot of changes this week. But
yeah, there has.
I'm going to throw it on you. What do you see
know.
that's changed?
So I would say the biggest change is Georgia, which does a state exam, not the UBE, but that's one of the jurisdictions that we cover, will not be holding a July exam this year. And instead they chose the September 9th and 10th dates, which again, I want to point out is a Wednesday and a Thursday. So we don't know why they did that, but it's not a Tuesday, Wednesday, so just kind of, I know that's Tuesday is like always the day of the week that's burned in my brain with the bar. So just keep that in mind. And then they're also doing a waiver, which as we've seen, every state looks a little bit different with how they decide to do this waiver, what it looks like. So for them, it's a temporary rule allowing recent law school grads to become provisionally admitted. And they are also allowing lawyers who are members of the bar in another state already who recently moved to Georgia, they could petition to get that waiver as well. So that would be if you had been practicing in Virginia, let's say, and then you just moved to Georgia and you were planning on studying and taking the Georgia exam, but you already were a member of the bar somewhere else, then you could get this provisional waiver.
Yeah, and there are a couple of things to keep in mind with this. One is you got to actually be a resident of Georgia as a licensed attorney. So if you were just thinking of going to Georgia, but you're still in Florida or Virginia or somewhere else, that probably isn't going to count. Now, we have put a link on our website to the changes state by state, including links to the actual bar examiner's statements. But you want to read that. If you're a Georgia bar taker, you absolutely want to read that. The provisional accreditation in Georgia, like in some of these other states that we heard from this week, probably won't affect most of our students in that you had to have been a 3L or 4L graduating in 2020. If you graduated in 2018 or before, you're almost certainly not going to qualify. Some jurisdictions might let you if you were 2019, but if you have taken the bar exam anywhere, anytime else prior to this, you're not going to qualify for this. This is a very limited carve out. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, unless you moved to Georgia recently and you are, so if you're...
and that's Georgia. And in some of these other states, they're being explicit in other ways, but the one uniform piece is, because I've heard from people this week who are saying, well, I took the bar back in 2015, do I qualify? No, that isn't going to happen. Or I haven't taken a bar in 20 years, do I qualify? Nope. Georgia's the first state I've seen that's actually said something explicitly about licensed attorneys in other states. But again, it's that you have to have residence in the state. And that's a very interesting piece. And I know that the next question is going to be, well, what about Florida? Yeah, I can't imagine Florida going that direction. They may do some other things, but certainly not that. Let's talk about Florida for just a minute. We've heard nothing from them yet. They are still planning a July exam. That still seems unlikely, in my view, without a whole lot of locations. The deans of the Florida law schools have all offered their schools for testing sites. But as you pointed out, there's a lot of proctors that you would need to pull that off. And I'm not sure how many proctors want to be in close proximity to people, without adequate testing. And I don't mean bar exam testing, I mean COVID-19 testing. It just seems strange to me. But Florida has not announced any changes. And I thought that was interesting since they came out with their results. I thought that they might wait for results and then announce something. They still haven't done that. So we're waiting on Florida. What's the story in California?
So they met on Tuesday to discuss what to do, but I have not heard anything that came out of that meeting yet. So I am wondering with Florida and California if they are going to wait for the NCBE's determination, which we're expecting, is it May 5th, around May 5th?
May 4th or May 5th, yeah.
Yeah. So I just can't imagine once the NCBE has said what they're going to do, I can't imagine Florida and California waiting beyond that really to announce their plans, particularly if the NCBE decides to say, we recommend that we don't hold a July exam. I think it would be difficult for Florida and California to be the lone holdouts. And as what you've talked about too, of do we have a big enough sample size? Does the NCBE then have a big enough sample size to even allow an examination date to go forward at that time?
Yeah, I think that's a real problem, particularly if New York, which is the third of the triumvirate of big states, if Florida and California are doing something on different dates, New York typically would be the third big state that you throw in there to get a big enough number to equate the scores. But New York is talking about limiting, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So I think the result of this is, you're right, I think that they might be playing a game of chicken with the NCBE, both in Florida and California, waiting to see who goes first and makes a decision. There was some interesting speculation in California about a variety of different things that could be done. There've been a lot of letters, a lot of change.org petitions. There's been a lot of editorials written, all of which may be perfectly wonderful and certainly compelling, but I don't think any of it's going to move anybody in California to do anything until the California court and the California bar examiners reach an agreement. And for those that don't follow California bar politics, there has been is it safe to say a tumultuous relationship between those two entities?
And they are sort of coming out of a rough year with last year. The test subjects were inadvertently, well, we don't really know, but were released to certain law school deans in California. And then they ended up having to email every single taker to tell them the subjects, which caused mass panic and confusion because no one knew if they were real or not. It was just, Mozzie's saying, no kidding. It was really crazy. So yeah, there's the head of the California bar just stepped down, and I think we have an interim right now. So yeah, it's a bit of a messy time already in the California bar leadership and their relationship with the California Supreme Court. So yeah, we're just not sure what's going to happen. Part of me wonders if they're waiting until their hand is forced, or they can at least say their hand is forced, so that if Florida and the NCBE are saying it's a no-go, then California can say, oh, well, we would have loved to have made it work, but we can't do it because we can't be the only state left.
And some of the things that were being discussed, letting anybody have a provisional waiver in, not going to happen.
That won't happen.
Get rid of the bar exam. That's not going to happen. We're going to go to online testing. That's not going to happen. California is considering online testing for the June baby bar exam. And the reason they can do that is that that's a more controlled environment. You're talking about very few people. It's done obviously through online correspondence schools, but even with that small number, they are struggling with how to secure the test. And I would say to those students that are first year law students for June or even October of 2020, continue to study as though the exam will happen. We haven't heard anything differently, but interesting that, we're not there yet. So that's where we stand in California. Yeah. Let's jump over to New York for just a minute, another big state. What do we know about New York? And we're going to put a big asterisk in front of this one because we were trying to figure this out before we went on air. But what do you think we know at this point?
So they are definitely doing the September 9th and 10th date. So they're not doing the July exam. They'll do September 9th and 10th. And they have talked about prioritization. So they are expecting to announce what they're calling a staggered schedule. So we just don't yet know what that looks like. There's been some talk of that they're going to prioritize based on people who live in or are residing in New York right now. So law students who live in New York, are maybe not from New York, but are there for law school. New York residents, certainly. We've seen other jurisdictions are doing it as their prioritization is first come, first serve. So once we fill up, we're done. but it doesn't sound like that's what New York is planning on doing. So yeah, it's
hard
messy
to not
right now.
it is, and there's some suggestion that New York might even prioritize the application process. That is, if you're a New York resident, you have a certain window of time to file for your application, and if you're not a New York resident, you'll have a later window to apply. I would say, and this would be true for every jurisdiction, it is your obligation as an applicant to stay informed of these rules. They are changing daily in some cases, hourly in other cases, and you need to be on top of it. There is no one else that's responsible for this. And I know that people are going to get confused and they're going to miss deadlines, or they're going to misunderstand the deadlines. And unfortunately, there's very little that can be done to help you. This is part of being a lawyer, is to understand deadlines. And this is messy, but I think it's one of those things you have to do, and you've got to watch it very carefully. Also, and this is absolutely critical, the only source that matters is the bar examiners. Yeah. Doesn't matter what we say, doesn't matter what Above the Law says, doesn't matter what JD's for All says, it doesn't matter what Bloomberg News says, or whomever it might be. All of that is speculation and secondhand information. If you don't have something in writing or an email or some indication directly from the bar examiners, please don't go down that road. It might turn out to be true, but it's just as likely that it might be incorrect, and it's changing all the time. So when you get a deadline, it's got to come from the examiners. If you've heard, for example, well, I don't have to get fingerprints in my state, unless you have that from the bar examiners, it's not true. And some states are saying you don't need fingerprints, but you got to do this instead, right? So you've got to follow all of those rules. And I just can't emphasize that enough. I know we're going to have people that show up at bar exams or expect to take exams and they've missed a deadline or a rule. So this is one of those things where you've just got to be super vigilant on your own, right?
Yeah, and a good example of that is literally the NCBE just updated their page since we started. Like literally we checked it right before we started. Since we just put this in, and it's confirmed on NCBE's website that Tennessee is now, who was saying we will have a July exam, is now saying that they're going to get a choice of July or September 30th, October 1st.
Who's going to get a choice?
Tennessee.
The applicants or the states got a choice?
And that is a good question, because obviously I haven't been able to read the press release, but it says it will offer an additional. So it will offer July, and it will offer the 30th and the 1st. The key is this is the first jurisdiction. So why it matters for you if you're not from Tennessee or you're not taking Tennessee. This is the first jurisdiction we've seen that is allowing two. That's the first. We wondered, I don't know if you remember, like a month ago when this first started, we said we wondered if that was going to be an option, that any jurisdictions would even be allowed to do both a summer exam and a fall one in order to cut down on the number of people who needed to take one or the other.
So, let's just talk about that strategy for just a minute. This is first cut thinking about it.
Right.
So this is first cut. Okay. I probably will change my mind in a week.
And Anetra says the applicant, as far as the email reads, is the applicant who gets to pick.
Okay, so. Good catch. All right, so Anetra is on it. All right, so here's the thing. My first gut, and I'd be curious what you say, Megan, I would go for the July exam, and here's why. If you're already studying, I think the vast majority of people, given a choice, will always defer. That is human nature. Push it off. It's an unpleasant thing. I'll push it back to the later date, right? If you can sit in the earlier date, if you've been studying and you're working for the earlier date, take the earlier date, because the applicant pool is going to be smaller. I'll bet you anything the applicant's pool will be smaller any place that does this in July than it would be in September. And I like the chances in a smaller applicant pool always, because then the equating of the exam shifts downward, and a lower score typically is sufficient. Work that might not be quite as good gets a little better score. MBE scores are equated to give you a higher scale, and I think you get a better result. That's my first take.
Yeah.
What's your thought about that?
Yeah, I agree definitely. And also I was reading through the order right now, and it is up to the applicant. So what I would say too is they said if you are already registered for the July exam, then what you would do is you could either stay with the July exam or have the option of pushing back to the late September, October exam. If you have not registered yet, you'll be given the choice there. So what I would say is I think that, and then if they're not going to give the July exam, as they said, if they're still under the stay-at-home orders and they can't give the July exam, then, obviously no one will take it at that time, and hopefully they'll be able to do the September 30th one. So what I would say too is there are no downsides, I don't think, to picking the July exam. If it's not safe to do the July exam, you will not take it then, because they will not give the exam. And if it is safe, then you will be able to do it. Then it's done. You're out of the way. I totally agree with Jackson. I think that most people will probably want to postpone it. So I just don't think there's any disadvantage to that. And then if you end up having to miss that one, you still have the October exam. I think the bummer with the October is if they are able to give, I think you're risking a bit more too, that if they're able to give the July exam in Tennessee, if conditions are safe enough there, and they can give the July exam, and then we see a resurgence of this in the fall, which is a possibility, and then they have to delay or cancel, they would just cancel the September 30th exam, you would have to then wait until February to take the next one. So I just think that there's the most likely that you would be able to even sit for the exam would be if you pick the July exam. So if you're in a jurisdiction, we might see other jurisdictions make this.
Yeah, I was going to say Oregon announced this week the possibility of something like this, but nobody else has done this specific thing that Tennessee did. This is fascinating. I mean, I don't know if fascinating is the right word. I mean, for a geek like me, this is just amazing. We've got 50 independent states plus a couple of territories who are all making their own independent decisions. And the NCBE is pretending like they can control them. Like, yeah, we told you to do that, which might remind you of somebody else. But they really don't have much power here. I mean, if these states choose to do this, I don't know. Once the NCBE said they were going to give 3 tests potentially, I think it opened up the possibility that a state could say we're going to give 3 tests. Now we got one saying 2. We didn't have that until a few minutes ago. So make sure you check our website at celebrationbarreview.com. There is a link at the top on the menu that says July 2020 exam changes. By the time you are hearing this, if you're on replay, we will have updated the Tennessee rules. But up to that point, we were right on it. I mean, we were spot on with all these changes.
It came through got updated.
It's Friday afternoons.
I know, it's crazy. And then Tanya had asked, do the smaller jurisdictions like North Carolina wait to see what the NCBE determines? And if the NCBE says to postpone to the fall, must the states follow their directive?
Well, if the NCBE doesn't give a July exam, then obviously a state like North Carolina, which is UBE, couldn't do it. And really no state could without the multi-state. So really the only state that could operate totally independently is Louisiana, because they don't use any of the national conference materials. But outside of that, every other state is impacted. So the NCBE has that control. Now, as we said, up to this point, the national conference has said they will conduct an exam in July, and they will do 2 exams, September 9th, 10th, September 30th, October 1st. Could that change? Absolutely. I think it could. But, I think at this point, you just watch your own state and see what they're telling you. And all of these states are making decisions. I think the states that have already gotten their results from February probably are in a better position to make some decisions because they know what they're dealing with in terms of repeat takers and what's going on. So I think, they might be a bit further down the road. I think California is going to be later. I thought it was interesting Georgia made a decision today, even though they haven't released their results. So maybe it's the inverse of that. Maybe the states are waiting, are trying to get out ahead of it before they put their results out. So we'll see.
All right. And then Deborah asked for the jurisdictions that are postponing until the fall, are they changing the application deadlines as well?
Some of them are, but not all of them. So again, to Deborah and everybody else, you've got to check with your examiners. I would be online. We had some people asking about, they tried to reach bar examiners, I don't know, DC or California, and they couldn't get a response. Yeah, nobody's in the office. They're all working from home. So I think the best way to stay in touch with all of that is online, checking the examiners' websites. Most of the examiners have been pretty good about keeping their websites updated, and also orders from their state's highest court, which is generally what controls what they do. So make sure you're checking that. Okay. We didn't go through every state, obviously we can't, but I think we've hit the highlights, right?
Right.
Virgin Islands changed some things, so you want to check that if you're a Virgin Islands student. And Oregon, I think those are the ones that I know about.
Yeah, Oregon. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, but we're trying to keep everything up to date for you guys, and then just check with your states individually for deadlines and application deadlines and changes about fingerprinting and character and fitness and things like that. So, yeah. Crazy.
Okay. Well, there you have the update about what's happening around the bar exam. As I said, Kansas is now apparently going to take the same position as Tennessee, so make sure you check that out on our website. Now, I want to conclude today's podcast with this special interview that we did with Frank. I think you're going to really enjoy hearing his story about the Florida bar exam and the tools he used and the approach he took to pass the exam. It's a great story, and I don't want to keep you waiting, so let's jump into our discussion. Welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers. We have just gotten Florida results out, and I am very excited to be sitting with Frank Madia today. Frank, what's your good news, buddy?
I passed the Florida bar exam, and I don't know if it's sunk in yet, but I just can't believe it.
So you had kind of an interesting approach into the exam. You took just the multi-state by itself first time, and then you came to us, and then you took the whole bar, and first time taking the whole bar, and you passed. Is that correct?
Yes. Last April when I first contacted you, and I was studying for the multi-state, my wife said, why don't you just go down to Florida, take the multi-state, because Courtney was graduating from high school, and give it a shot. So I said, well, let me call the bar examiner to see if I can do this. I found out that I could. So I went in there, I took the exam, I studied, took another online course just for the NCBE only. And I ended up with a 133. And I think you had told me when I called you after that I was a couple questions short of passing the NCBE. And then you said, you ready to roll? And I said, yeah, I'm ready to roll. I said, I need to take this exam in its entirety. So scheduled to take it with you. And I got enrolled, I think, in the summer, maybe August, September. And the rest is history.
Yeah, and you're a practicing attorney up in the Northeast, correct?
Yes, I've been practicing up in central New York for about 20 years. I took the New York bar 1998, I think it was. So I've been practicing for about 22 years. I was in the military. I was a judge advocate for 30 years, retired Air Force, National Guard. And I'm also serving right now as a town judge for almost 20 years in my town, part-time judge. So I got a lot of hats I wear.
Yeah, and so studying for the bar exam as a parent, as a husband, as a judge, as a member of the bar, that's not an easy task, is it?
No, it's not. And you really need a full, a cooperative effort from everyone. My wife and my daughter and my son, Michael, everyone's been great. Great friends that I've been around, great friends that I met through Celebration Bar Review that'll be friends forever. You really need the whole package.
Yeah. How many hours a week would you say you were spending in your studies for the bar exam this time?
Sure. I would work about 45 hours a week, approximately 45 to 50 hours a week practicing law. I had my judge position on Tuesdays for a few hours. And then I studied for, I would say at least, things really heated up. I really got in at least 4 hours in the evening every night. And then the weekends were full-blown, 5-6 hours Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, you were really dedicated to this process. In fact, we did a live boot camp in Celebration, and you and your wife came down, and she got to spend some time in town and at the theme parks, and you worked for a weekend, right?
Yes, I did. Boot camp for me, I think I passed. It was all about FLA, but an essay writing. I really enjoyed the experience. Getting to meet you and Megan and June and Sarah, and it was awesome.
Yeah, and we were excited to have you here as part of that. It's a small group experience, and we worked intensively for 2.5 days, and we taught you photo reading during that period too, right?
Yes.
What was that like?
You had to work on me, but I got it. Yes, it was a great experience. It teaches you how to open your mind to different ways of learning and gaining knowledge of the material. And I won't jump ahead, but you mentioned to me, when I took the New York bar, I was studying everything. I took a course and I had flashcards and I was trying to memorize all this law. And I'll tell you, when I went in this bar exam, I didn't know all the law. And I think on my coaching calls with other students, and I said to other students, I said, you're not going to know all the law. There's just too much to learn. So this photo reading course really helped you get through the material without spending hours and hours reading word for word. So I think it really helped.
Yeah, and you were very open to the process, and
Yes.
it was a lot of fun, I have to say. We kind of used you as our punching bag during boot camp, but you were a good sport about it, and you got better and better, and you were clearly adapting and using these tools. And I thought that one of the great things was your willingness to just embrace the process and to do whatever it took to be successful. Can you talk a little bit about that philosophy and why you approach things this way?
Sure. I try to be a happy-go-lucky person. Even when things are tough, I try to stay positive. I joke around a lot. I think I got that from my dad, but I am serious. My wife always says, you love to study, you love books, and I said, I know, I don't know. Although I love work and I love to study, and it doesn't bother me to sit there and get into the trenches and do all this work. But yeah, I just was open to it. If I can give you a little background about Celebration, I think I had mentioned to you, the way I found you was I was sitting in the hotel having dinner with my wife. And last April, we were there for Easter, and I was searching for a bar review, and you came up, and I'm like, Celebration bar review. I'm like, wait, we're in Celebration. And for those of you who don't know, I'm planning on moving to Celebration, my family and I, next year. And I said, Jackson, Mommy, I said, he starts talking about Celebration High School. I go, I think he's here in town, honey. I think he's got a bar review course here. I go, if this is true, this is meant to be. I have to take this course. And that's how it came up. It's a God's honest truth. And then I called you, and that was it. And you said yes.
Yeah, that was pretty weird. Guy says, "Hey, I'm downtown at the hotel across from Starbucks, and I only visit Starbucks 3 times a day." So I was like, "Whoa, this is pretty strange." We do have students who live in Celebration who take the course, and so that's always kind of interesting. And when you get here, we'll introduce you to the alums who passed, and
that's awesome.
So that group is growing rather rapidly. So that's kind of fun. And I know that for your family, this was a big investment of time and energy for them. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It was a big investment. My daughter goes to college here, and she was busy. She's a 2-sport athlete, so she was really working hard with schoolwork. And my wife, I got my little Macy here. You met Macy, our little puppy.
Yes.
We unfortunately had to put her down the day after the bar exam, but I got to bring her to Florida. And she hung on. She was not doing well, and my wife kept her alive for like literally 4 months. It was really tough, and my wife was in the den watching TV with her, which upstate New York, it was nothing but snow and cold here, so it was easier for her to do that and take care of the dog while I studied. I started in the kitchen. Although my wife loved hearing your voice, she said, honey, I think you've got to find another study spot because we got to eat dinner, And so I went out to Walmart and I bought a desk. And I was on a conference call. I go, I'm in the garage. I got heat in the garage. I'm all set up. That's where all my books went. I got all set up, and I studied every night in that garage. And every time I went out there, Jackson, we had snow and ice getting to the garage. And I'll never forget this. I said, I have to pass this bar exam. I need to get out of the Northeast. That's the truth.
So you got sent to the doghouse. Yeah. Okay. So you had taken the multi-state the first time, come close, but not quite made it.
Yeah.
Did that give you any concern going back in and taking the full exam?
No, because in hindsight, if I had talked to you first, I would have taken your course and taken both parts, because I took a gamble with taking one part because, as you know, the overall method, which got me through this exam, we'll get to, but you can't average it. If you don't get that 136, you don't pass if you take it separately. But I knew I studied and I worked on the questions, but I wasn't really ready for it. It was busy time for us with graduation and everything. So I knew that with your course and really hunkering down in some of the multi-state areas that I needed to, I would hope that would get me over the top.
Yeah, I think the bar exam, particularly in Florida, is a pretty humbling experience for a practicing attorney, because you've been in practice, you've been successful, 30 years in the JAG Corps, 20 years private practice, and you look around and say, well, I should know how to do this, and yet the bar exam is different, right?
You're right, and it really was. It's tough. You just don't know how you did when you come out of there, which I kept worrying about the Florida multiple choice. You said they were hard. I believed you they were hard. I worked hard on those Florida multiple choice, and I passed. I think the essay writing did it for me, FLA. I have no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, you got a good score on the Florida portion of the exam. The writing style was not issue spotting.
Absolutely not.
And as a practicing attorney and as a judge, you don't issue spot, do you?
Nope. Just solve problems. You just make solve legal arguments.
Right. So did you find this style of writing more consistent with what you were doing in practice?
Yes, I absolutely did. And I think that's what helped me. I told myself I'm going to follow FLA. And when I was in there typing, I said, Jackson, I hope you're right. I said, I'm literally following it to the T. And it really calmed me down. You know, we had some professional responsibility issues, and I would start with that first, especially on the third essay, which was a really tough con law essay. And I started with the ethics portion on ex parte communications. I made my headings, like you said, and I just started typing. I made the arguments back and forth, stuck to the 3 paragraphs. Justified print, everything, made my headlines or headings based on the calls of the question, started typing.
And in boot camp, we had a writing workshop. Megan led that. Was that helpful for you in getting ready?
Yes, that was excellent. It's so great. We only had like 20 or 22 students. And I mean, within 2 days, we all bonded so closely together. And I enjoyed being the funny guy there for the weekend. And we all had a great time. Megan was excellent. She would literally walk by and check our writing, make sure we were sticking to that FLA method. And that really is what got me started. And then I did several essays in practice and throughout the course. You know, I probably did over 15 essays. You know.
Yeah, you were pretty dedicated. You did an incredible amount of work and got in there. What was it like going to Tampa in February? I mean, we were just starting to hear about coronavirus. A lot of people didn't show up at the exam. We had a relatively small number of bar takers, only about 1,700, which is a very small number for Florida. What was that like?
It was interesting. You know, I was all set to go, and, you know, I flew down, and a very good friend of mine in our course, we became great friends to this. So I said, I'll pick you up at the airport. I got there a little earlier. I got my car. We, you know, went to our hotels. You know, another friend of mine that's a member of your course, he was there. So we all hung out together. You know, here's 3 lawyers with 60 years of experience behind us. We didn't take this exam lightly, but we stayed very calm, very relaxed. You know, at that point, we did all the work, and you just got to trust in CBR and trust in God that you're just going to go in there and do the best you can. And so that really helped me with my 2 good friends to be there with. Went to take the test. I have a funny story for you. In day 2, we were coming back from the multi-state, or going to the multi-state after lunch, and I go to sit down to take my exam, and there's no test booklet. I swear to God. And the guys are laughing still today. They go, if you don't have a test book in front of you, please raise your hand and tell the proctor. I literally was the only one standing in that whole room that did not have my test booklet. So I'm raising my hand. The lady's getting ready to start. And then the proctor came over. I go, please get my book. So she runs all the way up to the front. She grabs a book out of the box. And I'm like, I hope this isn't the same version I just took. So I want to tell you that funny story. But I was the only one in the room that didn't have a test booklet. But
even the proctors are picking on you, Frank. Yes, absolutely. So there's about a 6-week waiting period after the exam until the results come out. What was that period of time like for you? I know you came down to Celebration, came back shortly afterwards. You had a vacation planned, but then yes. COVID-19 hits. Everybody gets locked down. Can you just describe sort of that time?
Sure. Yes, it was very difficult. But after that, I went back to work and just got back into catching up on my files and plugging away, and I kind of put it behind me. I talked to you, and, you know, I gave you a little preview of the exam. I felt pretty good overall with the exam, except I was worried about the Florida multiple choice, and I couldn't even remember them. They were so hard. And you said, just put it behind you, Frank, because I know you worry about these things. So I put it behind me. I literally did until the last few days. I started thinking about it. But it was tough. Then we had a family vacation planned, and COVID-19 was just starting to hit. We went down to Orlando. I wasn't going to let that stop our vacation at the time because we worked so hard as a family to get to this point. For 5 months, I was studying with you, and we went and we enjoyed it the most we could. We got the most out of it before they started shutting down Florida. And then we got back home safely, and thank God everyone's healthy. And I've been working from home now. And I took the MPRE in March. That was a great move because I just made the deadline, and thankfully I passed that. I got a 102, so I was excited. Last Thursday, I got those results.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So talk about yesterday. It was only yesterday.
Yes.
When the results came out. What was that moment like?
It was unbelievable. I got up around 9 o'clock, and I kept checking my phone, and I said, no results yet. You know, it was like, I think it was like 10 o'clock or something. And I said, the results are up. I said, oh, I saw my wife and I just stood here near the computer, and I was literally holding her hand, and I was shaking because going through that list, you know, and I saw a lot of fails, and that wasn't good. Literally the first 40 people were fails in a row. I counted them, I think. So then I kept going down. Then I saw pass, fail, pass. And my wife's like, oh, no. I said, no, honey, it's good. I said, the third column, I passed this bar exam. So at first I was like, oh, my God, I passed? Did I really pass? And then I'm like, why did I not pass the multi-state? But I said, I don't care. I passed the exam. That's all I cared about.
You got the benefit of the compensatory model, the thing that you did the first time.
Yes, and I did it the hard way.
You pass overall. You've got everything worked out. And just, our early numbers, the pass rate for repeat bar takers was somewhere between 10 and 20%. So it was an incredibly difficult exam.
Wow.
So congratulations. So it was an extremely difficult test, and it's an incredible accomplishment that you've got. Your plan, of course, is to eventually come down to Florida, get away from those cold New York winters, right?
Yes. Yep. My daughter graduates next May from college up here in Herkimer, and she's already got a school in Lakeland. She's going to go to a college, and we're hoping to live in Celebration. That's our plan, and we're probably going to move next June.
Okay. Now, you were showing me your Celebration mug. I think you need to show that.
Yes, I have my Celebration mug, Celebration, Florida. Yes, we love that town, and hopefully we'll be able to have coffee together.
It looks like our house there. I don't know. That's kind of weird.
It could be. That's right.
Creepy. Yeah, there you go. So, well, we're really proud of you and delighted for you and your family. I know that it was a family effort, and incredibly great news. What would you share with other people about this process?
The advice I would give them is to, you have a study guide, and you just need to trust your 30 years of experience with a bar exam. And if you sign up for the course and, you get committed to it, you just got to trust the process. You can't do a mix of different programs. You just have to do you won't have enough time to do any other programs. You have to stick to Celebration, and you have a study guide to follow, and follow the study guide. It'll come. And my best advice to people is there's two things. The FLA method, you have to follow it and trust it. Because when I took this exam, I didn't know, a lot of law is in my head, but I really didn't recite a lot of law. I mean, I did, mention the law. I paraphrased it. But my biggest thing was in paragraph 3, when I got to unload arguments, additional facts and law. And I credit Evelyn on a coaching call because I was a little stuck in the beginning I understood the FLA from you teaching it. I went through your videos. I started practicing. I'm like, geez, where do I go into the additional facts and legal issues? As you know, Jackson, there's several issues on the bar exam, and sticking to that 3 paragraphs. That's where she said, Frank, in your 3rd paragraph. And I followed to the T. When you said in the 3rd paragraph, the first sentence, John will win because, and then I started arguing back and forth, and I applied more law, and I just stuck to that FLA method. That is key. Paraphrase the law. You're not going to understand and know every law, and you just can't do it. And at my age, 51 years old, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. There's a lot of 25-year-old students in there taking the bar, but I went in there calm. I was smiling. I think people thought I was crazy, but I said, I'm not going to get nervous.
And, sometimes people ask me if it's worth the investment of coming to boot camp. What would you say about that?
I definitely think it's worth the investment in boot camp. I think it's for the educational value, plus the camaraderie of meeting you and your whole staff and learning the photo reading, the mind mapping. Mind mapping's huge in this course. We didn't get to that, but mind mapping.
You use mind maps for your note taking, right?
Yes. No linear notes. Mind mapping, definitely. I used MindMeister.
Yeah, that's a computer program to set up mind maps. And for those that don't know what mind maps are, they're visual note-taking systems. So instead of linear, straight up and down note-taking, you're making visual representation of the material and seeing where it connects, where different ideas intersect in the law. Was that helpful for you in organizing your thoughts and notes?
Yes, it was very helpful because, you would do for example, torts. You do all your intentional torts on one mind map, then you do your negligence, and you just piecemeal it together. You have separate mind maps, and it helped keep everything, together in a good summary instead of just reading lists of notes. Because there's a lot of material. I think you had like 12 or 15 books. And there's so much to do. So you have to break down this material. Florida multiple choice. I knew there was 5 areas of law I had to study, and I, studied those areas. And you did a preview, and thank God you were right on. We had a contracts essay and a torts essay. And I will admit, being a lawyer previously admitted, I had some experience with not to compete. So I was smiling when I saw that come up. I really
that was nice.
Yeah. Yep. And then I flipped ahead quickly, Jackson, to the third essay. I thought it was a criminal law, and I was really going to get excited. But then I realized it was a con law. I said, okay, we'll come back to that one. And then I saw a torts essay, and I do personal injury law, so I was excited about that too.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, Frank, I want to thank you for sharing your story. I am looking forward to coffee with you when you get back into town.
Thank you.
And having you as part of the Celebration Bar Review Celebration alum group. Looking forward to that.
I don't know how to say this. I just can't believe it settled in. I mean, it's one of the toughest bars in the country, and I did it. But I did really well in Florida, and I passed 136.5. Luckily, my Florida score was very strong because of FLA.
Yeah. I had a mentor in this business 30 plus years ago who said anything over passing is wasted effort.
That's right.
It was an efficient effort on your part, and no one will ever ask again what your score was. So there is no shame in 136.5. So, only pride in that. And we are proud of you. Yeah.
Thank you. I have to say, my wife predicted a 137. She really did. My daughter said 150. But...
Okay. Well, we need to bring your wife on staff. That's clear.
Yes, that's right.
Well, listen, Frank, thank you so much. I know that our viewers are going to really appreciate what you've shared and your thoughts. All of us here just enjoyed so much having you as part of the course. I know you're going to stay involved in our private Facebook group with our ongoing students. That's one of the nice things that we've got, is that our alums stick around and help out. And we are looking forward to that as well. So best of wishes to you and to your family. Congratulations again. We are so delighted and just glad to be on the journey with you. And for our audience, thank you all for being with us again. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next time. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Jackson. Thank you very much.
Well, that's our episode for this week. There was certainly a lot to cover, but I think it's appropriate for a 300th episode. So I want to just thank all of you who've been loyal listeners of the podcast. I appreciate that so much. I appreciate your comments and feedback. I hear from people every week who tell me that they've been listening to this podcast for a long time and it's made a difference for them. I want to remind you about our special free training called Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam. You can link up to it and get your free spot just by clicking on the show notes or by going to celebrationbarreview.com/now. And then we'll see you on Saturday or Tuesday or Thursday, and you'll have the opportunity to find out how you can survive and thrive even in these uncertain times with the bar exam. All right, everybody, stay healthy, be well, and we will see you next week along the Extra Mile.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.